So Mayor, on the arena, I know you made some comments about this yesterday. Ken King has made it pretty clear in a couple of interviews that he's not going to be talking anymore, that this is essentially done for him. What's your response to that? And I mean, he has a talk coming up at the Calgary Chamber of Commerce.
Wait, he's not going to be talking about it anymore? He has a talk coming up in the Chamber of Commerce?
He's not going to be talking about the deals.
Uh-huh.
But do you think there's been a level? Would you say? Are you willing to say there's been a level of dishonesty on the part of the Flames with their proposal?
I wouldn't say dishonesty. I would, however, say that there are perhaps some errors of omission. And so I think it's important. If you don't mind, I'll actually get into this a little bit. I know that one of you caught me yesterday, and the rest of you didn't. So in the interest of fairness, I will say a little more about this. So yesterday, it was a bit surprising to see this big ad in the newspaper, because what was in that ad was not actually what the last deal on the table with the city was. And I thought it was important, and I'm very pleased that the city released the actual elements of the deal. So for example, yesterday you saw that the Flames owners are claiming that they're putting up $275 million up front. Makes it sound like a check is being put on the table. Certainly that has not been discussed. That would have really changed things had that been the discussion. The discussion, the last I saw, was that the Flames are putting $100 million in, and the rest would be a ticket tax, which they wanted the city to take out the debt for into front. So I'm not quite sure how that equals the Flames putting in money up front. In fact, if you use the argument that the ticket tax is the Flames revenue that they're giving up, can't you use the exact same argument that the property tax is the city's revenue that the Flames want them to give up? So in other words, the city ends up paying 120% of the arena? I mean, they're both silly arguments. It's like saying when you go to buy a car, I want you to knock 33% off the sticker price, but you know what? I gotta pay for gas and insurance, so I'm really paying for that 33% you're knocking off. Try doing that at the local Ford dealership and see how that goes. So really, what we need to do is be very clear with Calgarians what's on the table so they can determine for themselves. Is the city being eminently reasonable? Is the city being fair? Are the owners being reasonable? Are the owners being fair? You know, our goal always was to have public engagement on this. In fact, our proposal was a proposal to take to the public. I've said for a long time I didn't want this deal cooked up. I wanted the public to have input on it. And so I didn't think that would happen in the middle of an election, but here we are. And I'm glad that at least we're having this great conversation about it. The second interesting thing about the Flames proposal is that they claim that the rest of the arena cost 50%, which doesn't include the land, doesn't include the Saddle Dome demolition, which they insist on. It doesn't include any of the infrastructure upgrades that are required. But even that straight up cash is coming from something called a community revitalization levy. So let's be clear, that's tax money. A CRL is taxes. So that is straight up property tax from people who are in that neighborhood. It's property tax that the city wouldn't otherwise have. Also to be clear, the Flames would like that property tax to be paid by someone other than them. They are not willing to pay any rent or any property tax or in fact any revenue back to the city in their proposal. And so the CRL already exists. It's been in place for 10 years. And in fact, it's been one of the most successful community financing levies in the world. We're called upon to talk about it internationally all the time. It has led to a nearly tenfold increase in private investment versus what was invested in the East Village. So it did things like bring the East Village above the floodplain, build out the infrastructure in the East Village like the sidewalks and the street furniture and so on, help fund a couple of major infrastructure pieces in the East Village that would attract private investment, including the new Central Library and the National Music Center, and as a result has led to billions of dollars in private investment in the East Village. So it's worked really, really well. So there's 10 years left in it. And our partners at the Calgary Municipal Land Corporation, in fact I'm taking a break from a CMLC board meeting as we speak, have projected that in the next 10 years there's about $150 million left in that CRL. Given the decline in the economy, it might even be a titch lower than that. But there's about $150 million left, and that's already been allocated. And what the city is calling the indirect costs here, things like extending 17th Avenue through the Stampede grounds and connecting to 4th Street, creating a new underpass for people to get in and get out of the neighborhood, probably at 6th Street, are already in there. So that 150 million is already spoken for, and it is actually required in order to build all of those indirect costs. I know this is technical, but it's really important to understand. The Flames proposal is based on benefiting from the property taxes paid by the other developments in the area that do not yet exist. And as we've seen, there's already an arena there. There's already an arena there that has not led to this sort of development. I'm confident we can get this sort of development. That's what I've been talking about for the last several weeks. But it has to be very, very thoughtful, and it has to be long-term. And so the Flames don't want to pay any property tax. They want their neighbors who don't exist yet to pay all that property tax. And so that's challenging. And even if that happens, there's no money left in the CRL to do that without an extension of that CRL, which means the city is giving up that property tax money for many, many years going forward. All of that said, I'm not being a huge naysayer here. I've said from the very beginning, the city's at the table. There's lots we can negotiate. You know, one of the things the Flames released was a projection of how much they expected to pay in property tax and how it was way too much, which was surprising to me because no number's ever been on the table. And we've always said, as I said last Friday, that we're willing to negotiate how much that tax is. So I don't even know where they got those numbers from. So we're at the table. We will continue to be the table. As long as I'm the mayor, we will not leave that table. And if we can find a deal where there's public money and public benefit, if we can find a deal that's a win for the taxpayer as well as a win for the Flames owners, we will continue that conversation. These negotiations are hard. Guess what? They should be hard. We're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars. And I believe that you don't have a temper tantrum, you don't run away, you sit down and you figure out the right way to do it. And I hope that we will be able to continue to do that. The Flames are an important part of this community. We all want a new arena, but we've got to do one in a way that makes sense for everyone.
Mayor, is there any chance, given the historical challenges of development around the Saddle Dome, is it realistic to believe you could get 225 million out of a CRL, out of development out of that area? Is that a realistic number?
The 150 million that we've already, is what we think we'll get in the next 10 years, is a realistic number. So that 150 million that's already spoken for is a very realistic number based on what development we think will happen there. An additional 225, the only way to do that is if you have a heck of a lot more development than we are forecasting, which in a world where you have 30% office vacancy downtown is hard to imagine in the short term, or you just extend the CRL forever, which just means it's property tax money.
Mayor, Ken King yesterday told me, about 5 minutes after that your thing came out yesterday, that basically it was a waste of time, but you've done the question and answer.
Giving people actual facts is a waste of time. It's a point of view.
But he's saying, or the Flames are saying, you know, they're not at the table, they're not coming to the table, there is no table, and that things are done. How do you react to that when they're saying we're not, you know, it's over, it's finished, and there's even sort of talk about consequences. So
they seem to be spending a heck of a lot of time and effort trying to rationalize themselves and trying to make a better deal for people who say they've walked away from the table. I mean, look, this is the script. It happens everywhere. It happened 3 times in Edmonton over 10 years. It just so happens that it's in the middle of an election. And I am very confident that cooler heads will prevail, and whoever's lucky enough to be in this job after the election will start those conversations again. And if the Flames truly have done the math and realize they'll make more money in the Saddle Dome than in building a new arena, guess what? They're not going to want to build a new arena.
But are you willing
This is all about dollars and cents. Let's not forget that. It's not about personalities. It's not about opinions. It's not about people. If you believe that it matters who's at the table and who's not at the table, and I have to repeat, I've never been at the table. Mr. King loves to talk about me, but in fact, he's been dealing with a professional negotiating team. And if you actually believe that personalities matter and that this is a manhood measuring contest, come on. This is about money. It's about dollars and cents, and it's about making the right financial deal.